Hello everyone and welcome back. Are you guys ready to do a little bit more math? Because I certainly. In this video, what we're going to be covering are equations that have absolute value symbols. Okay? This is definitely one of those topics that can get confusing, convoluted. People get mixed up on these things, okay? And that's okay. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you out. And hopefully by the end of this video, I'll make it a little bit more clear on what you should be doing with equations that have absolute values. Okay? So what we're going to do, so think of absolute values. Let's talk about this for a second. So absolute value, absolute value. Think of these absolute value symbols. So think of it, it's usually like this, and then there is when it comes to algebra, there might be a letter inside. Okay? And I want you to think of this as a positivity machine. Okay? It is positively making things positive. Okay? Positive machine. And whatever goes into the positivity machine comes out as a positive number. Okay? So let's just say in our little example here that x equals a negative 10. Okay? And if we were to rewrite this with our input, we have our absolute value symbols surrounding the negative 10, and the answer is a positive 10. Okay? That is a very brief kind of idea behind that. The other way of thinking of it is think about when you drive in a car, ride your bike, do whatever, okay? You're traveling from point A to B, and from your home to somewhere else, and then back. And that distance is always positive. You never talk about it as a negative distance. And that's what absolute values really are used for, is kind of in math, like measuring distances or utilizing distances, where maybe you travel 100 miles to the east and then 100 miles to the west. So you're right back at your starting point. And how do you evaluate that distance? Well, you can use absolute value symbols, okay? Although you change direction. So let's take a look at a few example problems with absolute values in them, okay? Where you're being asked to solve the equation and it has an absolute value. Okay? So for our first one, we have our absolute value of k minus 6. K minus 6. And all of that is being divided by 5. And it equals 25. Okay? And what I do here, so I think of everything above the division sign as an island, and everything below the division sign as an island. Okay? So that top part is your numerator of this fraction, and the bottom part is the denominator. I mean, its division and fractions are very much so interchangeable. Okay? I want you to kind of keep that idea in your mind because it can be very useful when it comes to algebra and just mathing in general. Okay? So how do we undo the divide by 5? What's the opposite of divide by 5? Well, we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply this entire side by 5. And whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other side of the equal sign. This equal sign is like a mirror. Okay? So we're multiplying both sides by 5. And what we're left with on the left side is the absolute value of k minus 6 with our other absolute value part. And the 5, that got canceled out because we multiplied. Think of it like 2 negatives make a positive, right? And so they cancel each other out. And so k minus 6, the absolute value of that. Oops, let's make sure. Let's go back to orange. So that equals, so what's 25 times 5? So that is 125. And now this is where people get stuck, or this is where some of the confusion gets involved in. So the best way to think of it is that this absolute value is going to kind of split your problem into two. Okay. And what I'm going to demonstrate here is, so just watch carefully. So here's our first problem. A minus 6 equals 125. And our second problem is a minus 6 equals a negative 125. Okay. And what we're going to do is we are going to solve both of these problems. Okay. So how do we go about it? Well, let's just take one bite at a time. We'll look at this left one. So how do we get rid of the minus 6? Well, think opposite day. So we add 6 to both sides. We add 6 to both sides. And what we get is k equals 131. Okay? Not too bad. Now, over on this one, we have k minus 6 equals a negative 125. Okay? So how do we do the opposite of the minusing 6? Well, it's the same. You add 6 to both sides. Remember, the mirrors. We have our equal sign, and it's kind of like a mirror. Okay. And our answer is k equals, so what is negative 125 plus 6? Think of your number line. We are adding 6, so we are making it more positive. Okay, so negative 125 plus 6 is a negative 119. Okay, so these are actually our two answers for our problem. Okay, and we can even double check them if we wanted to. So if we plugged these back in for k, we should always get 125. Okay. And even this negative 119 minus 6 is a negative 125, right? But then we have our positivity machine. We have our absolute values, our positivity machine. So let's take a look at another example just to make sure you get this stuff down. Okay. All right, so this next problem, it's going to actually look quite a bit easier. That first one was a little bit more complex, but it's good to just get a nice array of problems to look at. So our next problem is the absolute value of negative r. So this is where it gets a little bit funky, right? So negative r minus 6 equals 3, okay? And so here we have our absolute values surrounding the r, and then outside of that, a minus 6 equals 3. Well, let's just get rid of the stuff outside of the absolute value symbols first. So we have a minus 6, think opposite day, so we add 6 to both sides because of our mirror of the equal sign. And what we're left with is negative r, the absolute value of negative r equals 9. Okay? And you're going to do the exact same thing. So negative r equals 9 for our first problem, and negative r equals a negative 9. So think this absolute value symbol kind of splits the equation into two, where you have to do a little bit of extra work. So how do we get rid of this negative sign in front of our r? Well, you can multiply by a negative 1 or divide by a negative 1. We'll just multiply both sides by a negative 1. It doesn't really matter. It's gonna get rid of it. Okay. And same thing over here. We'll just multitask. We'll just do everything here. So we're multiplying everything by a negative 1. We want to get rid of that negative sign around that r. Okay. And so that's what we've done. These cancel out. This right here turns into a positive. That right there turns into a positive. Over here, watch this carefully. See, look at, we have a negative times a negative, so that turns into a positive. Let's write everything out. So we have r equals 9 times a negative 1 is a negative 9. And r equals a 9 is just 9 there. We've already canceled that stuff out. So our two answers for this problem are r equals, you can write it this way, r equals -9 and 9. I mean, you shouldn't have to put a positive sign. That should not be required. It should be assumed, especially if you already have a negative number there. So this problem was really, really nice. Let's just, I'm not even going to cut this one. Let's just go right into another example, okay? Oh, let me make sure I don't mess it up. Okay. So, let's take a look. Let's take a look at another one. Something a little bit nastier, but not too nasty. Okay, so here we go. This is a good one. This one is gross looking, but I promise you, once we work through it, it won't be that bad. So we have our absolute value, no surprise there, of 6 over f minus 13, and absolute value equals 23. Okay, so inside of the absolute value, we have 6 over f, our variable, minus 13, and that equals 23. And remember, those absolute values, they split it into two different problems. Okay, so what we really have, is 6 over f minus 13 equals 23, and 6 over f minus 13 equals a -3. Okay? And now we're back in the realm of kind of normal multiple step algebra problems. Okay, so how do we get rid of this minus 13? Well, let's add 13. Okay, and we have to do that to both sides. So what we're left with now is 6 over f equals 26. Okay. And over here, same thing. We're going to add the 13, and we're going to do that to both sides. And what we're left with on this part is 6 over f equals, so -23 plus 13, that is a -10. We brought it closer to 0. We made it more positive. Okay? Adding 13 is making something more positive by 13 units. Okay, so now it's like, well, but Paul, we have a number over a variable. But I promise it's not too weird. I mean, there's a few different weird ways that you could go about doing this, I guess. Let's see. Let's just do it this way. Okay? So you know what? Let's just stick to our normal kind of ideas for now. And maybe later on I'll do another video and I'll do it a different way. Okay? As long as you're getting the right answers, there's no real wrong way of doing math. That's a controversial topic that maybe I'll get in. So let's just move this variable over. Okay? So 6 divided by f. How do I undo the dividing by f? Well, think back on our other stuff. We multiply both sides by f. Okay? So let's just go ahead and multiply this by f, and we have to do it to this other side. And same thing over here. So we multiply this by f, and we have to do it to this side. And what you end up with is exactly what we have been doing. So the f's cancel on the left. Okay, f's cancel on the left, and you're left with 6 equals 26f. And over here, you're left with 6 equals -10f. Okay. Now what you need to do is how do we get rid of our number in front of our variable? Well, we divide by 26 here, and you have to do that to both sides. And over here, how do we get rid of the -10 in front of the f? Well, it's -10 times f, so you have to divide by -10. Okay? And you have to do that to the other side. Don't forget about that. Okay? Remember the mirrors. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. The mirrors are a big deal. Okay? So, what is 6 divided by 26? Well, I mean, it's a fraction, right? but we can simplify it. Basically, this ends up being, so let's go with, I'm going to simplify it real quick. So you can divide both the top and the bottom by 2. So it ends up being 3 over 13 equals f. And over here, you can divide both the top and the bottom by 2, right? So it ends up being 3, but don't forget that negative sign. So it's a negative 3 over 5 equals f. And this right here, these are fraction answers. They're fine, but if your teacher wants you to answer them in hundredths or thousandths, just go ahead and type that into your calculator. Find that thousandths or tenths place or hundredths place and round to that position, okay? So here our two answers are f equals negative 3/5 and 3/13. So those would be the two answers if you were asked to answer them in fraction form. So I hope this is helping you out. If you guys do have any more questions, make sure to let me know, right? If these are helping you out, let me know. It's awesome. I've been a teacher, or I taught in adult education for 3 years, and I absolutely love helping people. So if these are helping you, that would be great. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the day, and thank you for watching my video.